A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 22.
All big changes start with a swift kick in the ass. Join the journey of lifelong friends, John Curran and Tom Stewart, as they make conventional thought bend over and take a boot to the keister. Warning, listeners may notice a force equal to or greater than needed to get your ass moving. A swift kick in the ass. Living life on your terms.
Welcome, I'm Tom Stewart, and I'm joined with my lifelong friend, John Curran. And today we're talking about a boot to the ass. Get started, part 2. The first one we talked about two of our four cornerstones, which is mind and body, and talked about how me and John are gonna start trying to get in better shape. I'm gonna wake up tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. I have my accountability partner of Jennifer, my wife, who is a CrossFit Nazi, and will definitely wake me up and make sure I'm out of the bed, even though I'm not a morning person. And today we're going to talk about how me and John first started our podcast and the whole reasoning behind it, and how we're trying to use it as an escape. This is down the road from full-time employment in the service of others. It focuses on purpose and potential. John?
Yeah, Tom, before we get too far down the line on this, in the first part of this discussion where we talk about mind and body and how we're going to get back in shape, kind of reminded me of that How to Pick Up Girls book that we had when we were teenagers.
The 101 best pickup lines or something?
Yeah, I mean, it was terrible. I mean, they never worked for us either. But one of those pickup lines came to mind after that episode, and it was, "If I told you you had a nice body, would you hold it against me?" Do you remember that?
Yeah, I'm surprised we didn't get slapped more as a kid. I had I had a contest once when I was with this guy named Mike Bruno, and this was when we were little kids. We went to the Hollywood Mall, and I had watched like some TV show like Real People the night before, and they were doing surveys, and they were getting people to answer different things. So I would come up to someone, and I would come up to women coming to the mall and be like, "This is a survey. We wanted to see if you would give me a kiss." And to my surprise, this lady gave me a kiss, and I was like, "Whoa, this is cool, man. This is gonna work." Didn't
She
work
was
that
an
way.
85-year-old woman, Tom, and she gave you Tom.
No, no, she was actually pretty hot. Yeah, she was probably like young teen. I mean, like a teenager or early 20s, and that was like 12. So to me that was like, yeah, score,
It's
buddy.
Yeah, that's funny, Tom, because
But I did, but
that fish that I
within the
caught, it
same,
keeps getting bigger every time I talk about it,
yeah, but
and
the same
the
week they
woman
had a
gets younger every
no,
time we talk.
the same week they had a sidewalk sale, and these two Asian chicks walked by, and I was like, oh man, they look hot, and I you know not smartly reached my hand out and grabbed her butt, right? And she turns around and she goes, "Hey, you!" She starts cussing me out, and then all these two big hippie guys ran up. I guess they were her boyfriends, and all stacked with muscles, and I'm just a little kid, and I'm like, he did it. And I pointed at my friend Mike. He's like, I didn't do it. They went over, they grabbed him by the shirt like they were gonna kick his ass. And it was funny. They never did, but they threatened us. We were scared.
So it's a great trip down memory lane. We have so many memories together. I mean, we've known each other all of our life. So
People are gonna
we
wonder if they want to they want to listen to anything we have
listen
to
to.
say.
Yeah, we should stop talking now. Back to the purpose and potential, Tom. Uh, you know, I think way back when we were teenagers, I know that my purpose for wanting to work out was really to develop my body. I was a scrawny little kid. I was a weakling, and working out gave me, built up my muscles and built up my confidence as well, so that when I tried to pull off these pickup lines, if I wouldn't get slapped too hard, or if I did, it wouldn't hurt because I was strong. But we all have a purpose for doing things, and knowing why you're doing something is exceedingly important to helping you reach your goals. in episode 1, I talked about this 4-mile long hike that I had with my dog, and alone with my thoughts, I was and it being my birthday, I was thinking, about how I want to change my life over the next 2 years. And number one was to get in better shape. Number two was to get better organized. Um, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make light of this, but when people die, they can't take their things with them. And my father passed away almost 2 years ago now, and I think his death was really the impetus for us starting, the blog and podcasting and trying to teach people what we've learned throughout all of our lives. But he couldn't take his things with him, and I inherited a lot of that clutter. And even before he died, when he was sick, I was traveling from Virginia down to Florida, picking things up, bringing them back here. My shed was full, my utility closet full. I mean, I didn't know I don't even know what I have. And all that clutter is weighing me down. They say that a cluttered desk means a cluttered mind. Well, what do they say about a cluttered shed? I mean, I've got tons of crap. I mean, my wife will attest to that. I've got all these projects. I don't really know what I have. So my number two goal over the next 2 years is to get better organized.
Oh, I
And
thought
I'm
you were going to say. I thought you were going to say get on an episode of Hoarders.
I'm not. I don't think there's a. I'm not. I don't have stacks of old newspapers, and I don't have 100 cats. So I don't. I don't think I'll be. I don't think I'll qualify for Hoarders. But I do have a lot of boat parts, and I've got a lot of tools and stuff, that my dad thought was valuable for some reason, like marine transmissions. So I'm not going to just, I didn't know what to do with it. I know some of it had value, so I've been selling it off on eBay or Craigslist or whatever to make, some extra money. And I think that he would want me to convert it to cash. And in fact, as I think about, as I look at all this stuff, I'm thinking, why did Dad have it? He never, he didn't have a boat that needed that transmission. What is he? And I think what happened is, as he saw things that had value or he thought had value, he'd pick them up and put them in a storage unit. So I think he expects me to convert that to cash. So once I started getting better organized, and started I built a huge garage to keep all this stuff in, not to get more stuff, but to get more organized. And as I started kind of grouping everything and getting organized, I do feel better. And I'm looking forward to, the next 2 years of getting my boat up and running. I also have a purpose for that because my dad was cremated and he wanted his ashes spread out at sea. So I'm going to finish restoring the boat, the project boat that he started. I'm going to finish that off, and then we're going to, go out into the ocean and spread my dad's ashes. So for me, that's a purpose, and that's driving me to get better organized. It's driving me to get my boats operational. I mean, this one project boat that I have, and I know why, and it has special meaning to me. I think a lot of people, if they maybe get turned on to the newest fad, like the paleo diet or reading The Secret. They kind of get pulled into these movements without really having a reason why. Let's just face it, people want change in their life. Not everyone is happy 100% with their life. Nobody is. Everyone has things that they can change. So knowing why you're changing can really help you. It can lead to success.
Right. And you talk about movements. I'm going to get to something in that I went to this weekend. and it was created by podcast movement. The creator Jared Easley, who was the host of Starving to Doubts. If anyone's listened to that podcast, it's pretty cool. There was some very good wisdom that was shared this weekend, and it kind of brings us up to the point that we were talking about, which kind of covers potential. Um, Last episode, we briefly mentioned that it's been a year since I called John and we were talking. I think it was on your birthday, right?
It was on my birthday.
Right. So usually, I talk to John a couple times a year, right? Almost always on his birthday. Now we speak almost every day, and if anything, that phone call led us our friendship to rekindle our friendship and make it tighter, and we picked up just like we were when we were 4 and 5 when we first met. Um, but what happened is, I had been tossing around an idea for a while. I wanted to do a podcast. I work in radio. I see the writing on the wall. Radio is going to be taken over by new media. I have a domain name that I'm sitting on that's based around new media. I have a couple of them, and I wanted to start something because that's what I know. I know broadcasting. I know computers and graphics and all of the video and all that kind of stuff. I really like that, and I wanted to do a podcast based on that. But before I wanted to do that, I also do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I was trying to help the gym that I was going to. I did a lot of videos for them, promoted them and stuff, and I was going to do a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu podcast, which is probably still going to happen down the line. But at the time, my wife was going to co-host with me. She was kind of like iffy about it, and our first thing was like, we're going to interview my coach. Well, he kept on standing us up, and then it just never happened. And I was a little perturbed, and I was like, man, I just want to start a podcast. And I asked John, I was like, you know what, me and you, we always talk about these deep subjects. Why don't we start a podcast? And John was like, yeah, man, let's do it. But then we were like, what? First my intention was that he was going to talk about new media with me, but John's an expert in business, and among other things. But I was like, well, where's we do have some stuff, but we started talking about what are we really, really good at, besides that. Those are our skills, but what do we feel passionate about, and things that, we could talk forever about. And that really is the inner battle, the struggle for self, the things that we cover about self-change. And we talked for a long time, for months. We planned this out, even getting the swift kick in the ass name. We were like, we want something to punch you in the face, man. We just want something that kicks you in the balls. And we were like, all these different names that we were like, well, I don't know if we can do that. But finally we settled for a swift kick in the ass, and we started developing a podcast and a game plan around it. We recorded shows starting. When did we record our first show?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at that. But you're right.
It took a couple months before we ever got to that point, because there's a lot of stuff that you have to figure out, and just and just planning and trying to make things happen. And I think it was around the beginning of summer, right before the beginning of summer, and we started recording episodes, and we launched in October. And we've been doing a series on the 48 Laws of Power, which people probably, if they listen to our podcast, probably think that's all it's about, but it's not. That's just a long extended series. It really is about personal change.
Yeah, we've always been, into personal change and self-help. We've done a lot of reading on the subject, so we have a very deep understanding of it. I think I was introduced to self-help in college. When some self-help books were recommended, or actually they were part of the reading requirements for some of the classes I was taking in health science education. But as Tom said, I'm into business. I have an MBA in risk management and insurance, as well as a master's of healthcare administration. So I have a corporate job, and I've been in the industry for over 25 years now. I worked my way through school. And my dad, I worked my way through school so I could follow my own path. My family had a printing business, and my parents expected me to go to college, get my degree, come back to Hollywood, Florida, and take over the printing business. But I was about 2 years into college, and I told my parents, I really appreciate the offer, and I appreciate that you want me to do that. But the printing business is not my thing. I do not want to do that. And I walked into a hospital to get a job so I could support myself through school, and I felt like I was home. I mean, I walked through that door and I could feel it. It was like it was meant to be, and that kind of got me headed into learning more about healthcare.
Well,
Um,
you mentioned that you felt like you're supposed to be there. I understand that because when I first got into radio, I got my foot in the door, and I was only getting paid like $6 an hour at the time. This is back in the '90s, and I was like, it's not good money, but I got my foot in the door. I've made it. I've arrived. Because at the time, radio was not so easy to get working. I mean, radio was bigger than it is now. Now it's a dying dinosaur. But back then it was radio and TV. There was no internet yet, and radio people, I mean, they were treated like celebrities. So I mean, and I worked at a rock station, and I was just like the rock station that we grew up on. It was 103.5 WSHE. It was like the coolest station that was down in South Florida, and for me to get my foot in the door, it was awesome. But
yeah, you
somewhere
were
along that
the
line, things change, right? I mean, life changes, life comes
yeah
at you, and my whole industry changed. I mean,
you
it's
were
not.
you were renegade of the airwaves, if I
Yeah, I
remember.
used to have a heavy metal show. Yeah, and long hair, and I had a partner named Bones who just won an Emmy. I didn't know if you know that, but yeah, my radio partner just won an Emmy for sound design on Discovery Latino, Discovery Channel. But
Yes,
yeah,
but you're right.
it's things changed. Like my industry's changed. It's lot, and I was explaining this to someone that the soul of radio has gone. It's just dead. It's just dying. There's very few good, things out there that make people really want to listen to radio. And I think it's going into podcasting. I see so much
it's
innovation and so many creative, things without limitations. That's what podcasting doesn't have anyone that's going to stop you from. You can say what you want. You could talk about what you want, and you could be as creative as you want. And I think that's huge, man. That's like going back to the beginning of radio. There was this guy named Gordon McLendon, and this guy, basically, he was one of the creators of Top 40 Radio. Top 40 Radio was actually developed in a bar in Omaha, Nebraska. I think his name was Stores. He came up with the idea of kind of, like a jukebox on the radio. That's how they created it. But Gordon McLendon took that idea and ran with it and created one of the first Top 40 stations, and I think it was in Texas. And then he created like radio networks. Before anyone had radio networks, he took like baseball games and figured out ways to connect them over phone lines and stuff, and built the first radio network. But this guy also, he employed every person that was at the station, even the secretary, to be a news reporter. So anytime they saw something, they would find a payphone and they would call in and give news reports live on the air. They would pot up the phone call, and that secretary would become a newscaster. And then they would take vans, and they only had like a couple like studio station vans, but this guy was smart. He would change the numbers. He had magnetic numbers, and he'd put like number 65 and number 33, and he'd have all these vans driving around changing the numbers constantly, so people thought there was like a whole fleet when there was only a couple of them. But that's the feeling I get from podcasting right now. I think it's heading for it's like the quote Alex Blumberg. It's the second coming of the golden age of radio, of audio.
you talk about things changing. I think I'm out. I'm not in the radio industry. I'm in healthcare, but healthcare also has become, gone away from the doctor making house calls to it's big money, it's big industry nowadays. I think that's the same with radio. It has there's not a lot of heart involved with it. I mean, and that's when you have direct patient care, of course there has to be heart, but you know that behind that doctor, behind that nurse, there's an insurance company or a big hospital CEO, really calling the shots. And hospital and healthcare is a business. Otherwise, they would not be able to provide that service. Same
And
thing.
that's
Radio.
what's happened to radio. I mean, besides the internet, the internet's basically is killing
Yeah.
media as we know it, old traditional media. We've seen it in the newspapers, we see it in TV, but now with the radio, it's not only the internet. That's probably the final nail in the coffin in some of these new technologies. Once podcast and other forms of audio get inside the car, man, it's a whole new game. But the thing
Yeah.
is that these corporations, they get rid of the people, and what happens, they think, oh, we can put automated computers in to replace the disc jockeys, to replace the talent. We'll have one guy in one market do 5 stations across the country, right? And so they fire 5 other people, right? And then they make sure that there's a computer running their voices for them. So it's not live, it's canned. It's hard to be sound live. It's something about radio when you try to record it and you're not actually speaking to someone, it makes it more difficult. It's not like the guy's grooving to the Rolling Stones and all of a sudden he's like, hey man, this is great. Not like the old Wolfman Jack. He's sitting in a studio recording a bunch of breaks in a row, and it just loses something. And I'm sorry, but people can hear it. Your voice is authentic, and when you try to fake it, it doesn't work. So what they have is they have this voice tracking thing that is just wiping out the industry. They fire a bunch of people. They don't let people come up. They don't have any part-time or overnight people anymore. That's how you used to get into radio. That's how you used to get on the air. Is you'd start overnight when the shifts that no one wanted to work, or you do weekends and holidays. Well, you don't do that anymore. We have computers that take care of that. So there's no new talent coming into the field, and it's just killing it. It's killed it, man. I've seen so many talented people just get thrown by the curb, and it's sad.
Well, working for a big corporation, I guess, and I really feel old when I hear myself saying this, but times have changed. When I was in graduate school, I remember one of the professors saying, if you change company, if you work for more than 2 companies during your career, you've done something wrong. And that's because that was before managed care hit, and there was actual loyalty to an organization that you worked for, and people were very passionate about what they do. I don't see that passion as much in corporate America today. In fact, I think a lot of people are just going. They're in the rat race. They have kids to feed. They have they need to put a roof over their head. They need to work, and they're willing to say yes sir, no sir, or yes ma'am, no ma'am. How high, and be that corporate person, because it's making money, and it's really easy to get lost in that. For myself, my dad was an entrepreneur before that name was ever even used. He owned his own businesses, and what he would do is he would buy a business property that had some type of business in it, take over the business, even if he knew nothing about it, and run it and manage, run the business, build up the business, and sell the business, and then he'd sit back and collect rents. That's a pretty smart idea.
Yeah, your dad learned from playing Monopoly, I think, because I noticed, there's I still see it. John's dad was buying up all this property because he would buy the business on the lot next to his print shop, and before you know it, he owns this whole area, this whole block. And just like in the Monopoly, when you own Boardwalk and Park Place, the rent goes up, man, because you're the boss now, and that property all of a sudden becomes more valuable because it's not just a section of it, you got the whole thing. So if a bigger Walmart comes and says, hey, I want to buy that, how much? You have a lot more leverage, and that's what John's dad was doing, was buying all these properties and basically owning his own little area.
Yeah, so he had a hardware store, he had the printing business, he had an air conditioner and radiator shop, as well as rental properties.
Oh, I went and he had some hot dog place. I remember I went and ate
Oh,
some
and
hot dogs.
when my dad was, I think he was over 75 when I think he was about 75. He started a restaurant. He bought a piece of property. It was empty, and he decided, I'm going to start a restaurant. So he and my mom ran this restaurant for a couple of years. And so, I grew up around this, and that entrepreneurial spirit has always been inside of me. I've always, I've worked for corporate America, but I see myself really as a hired gun, and I'm paid for my intellect and my brain, and to get a job done. I've never really bought into, that I know that there are a lot of people where their corporate job becomes their life, and I'm not saying I've been there myself, but when my first child was born, I thought, wait a minute, this is not right. My priorities changed, and I put my family first. And for me, I didn't want to spend all my time working, just working for a company. I wanted to have purpose. Um, so that's absolutely influenced me throughout my life.
All right, so
And
let's talk about potential. So the whole
well,
thing with the podcast, it's not that our business is the podcast. It's a vehicle. It's a way to start
it's a way
developing
to
a business.
and
Because
express ourselves.
right, and
I-
it's I
What I
think
was
there's a lot of potential in this whole industry and podcasting.
well, what I was going to say, and sorry to cut you off. I was almost there, but I wasn't quite there
Oh, sorry.
before. Um, we all need a creative outlet. We all need passion in our lives. For me, I love to, and this sounds cliched, but I love to learn. I love to learn. I'm just like my dad. Like, he would go and take over a business he knew nothing about, but he would learn, and he would grow, and he'd find out how to do things. And I'm cut from that same cloth, so I enjoy that. But I never found, corporate life passionate. Um, well, I did meet my wife at one of my jobs, so that was
No, I mean
passionate,
mine
but
too. Yeah.
a different type of passion. It wasn't fulfilling. Work was not fulfilling for me, um, and I think podcasting allows you to have a creative outlet, like none other that I've ever seen. I enjoy writing. I obviously enjoy talking, and someday I'll get to my point. Uh, it's so funny. If you go on our website, you'll see underneath purpose a quote from Steve Martin from the movie The Jerk. It's hilarious. And I could picture it in my head. He said, I got one. I got one. I got a special purpose. And he says that after he discovers his weenie.
That's a
So,
classic, man.
so it's important, going back to what we are saying before, it's important to understand why you're doing something. And if you're just going through the, routine, you're on the hamster wheel, you're in the rat race, and you want to get out, you can do something about it. You have power to do that, but you need to find that purpose. I mean, getting out of that and doing something different, that in itself is a purpose, uh, to change your life. And you can change your life drastically if you put some thought into it. We all have potential to do that.
Absolutely. So what I wanted to talk about, John, is some of the stuff in the last episode. I was just trying to zip my lip because you were talking about stuff I had just topics that they covered at the Podcast Florida event that was organized by Jared Easley and Lou Mongello. Lou is he has the Walt Disney World radio podcast. This guy was a lawyer. He's making a full-time living now doing podcasting, helping people. He's living his passion. He loves Walt Disney World, and he loves sharing that with other people, and he has a whole vibrant community behind him because they resonate with him when they hear him. And that there was a lot of people in that room that were the same way. And one of the guys that was very inspirational, he was the first speaker. I've heard of him before, and you hear different podcasts and you'll check out their websites, and I forget. And I didn't realize until he started speaking. I was like, oh, wait a second, I know who that guy is. He was a high school, and now he's like a full-time blogger. His name is John Milligen, right? And he has He has a site, Blogging Your Passion. He also has some other he has some podcasts too, but that the main thing is I picture that site, and the things that he was talking about had nothing to do with oh, this 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 cable goes here, this does that, which I didn't want to see anyways. I know all that. Um, what he was talking about, he says everyone has a gift. He says your gift is needed in the world. He says everyone has a message, and everyone's message needed in the world, and only we are, we have only we, only John Curran can bring his specific message, to the world in a specific way. No one else is going to do that, and that's what you're meant to do. And if you're not living up to sharing and living up to your potential, you know, you're cheating the world other than just yourself. And I think that happens to a lot of people, and I think we feel like we're stuck in a rat race. I know I do. I mean, I seeked out this whole venture with John because I want to live in an RV one day and travel the world like my dad did, and and not have and still be able to work. Unfortunately, my dad didn't have that technology, and he had to eventually come back and buy a business. And but he used to travel around with my mom across the United States, and they were living the life. They had freedom, and that's basically what I seek. I mean, I've speak endlessly on this podcast about my horrific commute that I have to drive to work every day. And I don't want to kill people, but talking about it, but it makes me resonate with when I watch like Breaking Bad and all these shows where guys are just so frustrated. I understand that, man, because I understand how it's to feel, and you go someplace and you don't even feel like you're um like you're appreciated, and it's like, why am I killing myself and my health to do this day in and day out when there's other alternatives? And I think a lot of it has to do with fear. I mean, obviously I have a family. I can't just jump out, but I'm making a plan, man, just like an escape plan. Just, maybe it's a survival plan because I don't know how long radio is going to be around. The radio fires people every other week, it seems like, and everyone's scared. My boss is scared. It's just, it's a whole place of fear. But anyways, this podcast conference was really cool, and he was one of the speakers that I liked, and he also talked about passion, what you love to learn, and you know, um, it's you talked about passion, talked about confidence, the deep belief that the message is needed in the world. He mentioned a quote that I don't know who said it, but it was "Throw your heart over the bar, and the rest will follow." And he was speaking. It was some trapeze artist, and it was a guy that was starting to become fearful, and he couldn't that it's in that if you're swinging by a trapeze and you have fear, it's not going to work, man. You got to have confidence. I remember when I was a kid. Remember when I broke my arm, John, jumping
Oh yeah,
ramps
I
in
remember
front
that.
of in Mark Coleman's house. Um, I broke my arm like really bad, and I used to love racing BMX bikes, and I was one of the fastest kids in the neighborhood, and I had bought this red line BMX
Ask Brian
bike.
Lord.
Yeah, and
He could never
um,
catch you.
yeah, we used to lose that poor kid. Sorry. Um, we used to take him on adventures, but no, I broke my arm really bad. I had metal plates put in it, and then I tried BMX racing after I did that, but I could never get over the fear. Every time I came up to a jump when I was racing and there's guys on the side of me, I would hesitate, and that little bit of hesitation caused me to lose the races. I was like, I can't, I never did overcome that. I guess I should have, but
You know, and
I realized that's what it was. That
you
fear
know how
held me
often
back.
and how often does that happen out in corporate America? To whereas like you said, as we have we're grown ups, we're adults, we have families, we have responsibilities, mouths to feed, and how many of us really live in fear of losing our job? I mean, the economy's tough. Life can be very difficult, and scary. But do you really want to live your life in fear? I remember back when I was in college, I was just about ready to graduate from the University of Florida when the Gainesville murders happened. And I don't know if you remember that, but I mean,
I remember that. Yeah, that was horrific.
you know, was and I'm sorry, I don't mean to. I think there were 6 people that were murdered, but what was happening is this guy was sneaking into apartments at night and and targeting basically young women, but everyone was scared in the entire Gainesville area. And I remember talking to my mom, and my mom said, "Johnny, I want you to come home." And a lot of students left school until they caught the murderer. And I told my mom, I said, "No, I'm not leaving. I'm careful. I don't, I'm not walking down dark alleys, but um, I've worked too hard. I'm about ready to graduate. I'm not going to delay that. And plus, I was doing an internship at the time that was a paid internship. I was making $5 an hour, and I didn't want to give up my $5 an hour.
But
But it
yeah,
was,
that guy wasn't run of the mill. Just oh, I killed someone here. That guy was a freaking serial killer. He was
oh yeah,
posing the
oh yeah,
bodies
serious.
and like really whacked out crap.
And I worked at the hospital there in Gainesville, so I knew a lot of the people. A lot of the people who had spouses that worked for the police department or the ambulance companies or fire department, and there was a lot of talk going back and forth about these crime scenes and what was going on. It was horrific, um, and very scary. But at that time, I said I told myself, if I run from this, if I run from fear now, I'm going to be running from fear the rest of my life. And I just absolutely refused to do that. And that was one of those mile markers in my life that I think back on that changed it changed my life permanently. And I have always been somewhat fearless. I mean, I almost married the wrong woman. I got 2.5 weeks before the wedding, and I called off the wedding. Now, how many people do you know that actually knew they were marrying the wrong woman and went through with it? And I couldn't live with myself doing that. And I've had friends say, "Man, you've got balls of steel," but I don't see it as being, I see it as something normal. You can't live in fear, and if you know something's not right, you need to take steps to make it right, and only you can do that. So stop telling yourself that you can't. Tell yourself that you can, and go for what you want, because life is just too short not to get what you want out of life.
Amen. Hallelujah. Yeah, that seemed to be a consensus with a lot of the discussions that was at the podcast, the Florida podcast. I don't know what you call it, seminar maybe, but it was called podcast Florida. But it was all based around mindset. That almost everyone had something to talk about, about motivating and getting over the fear, getting not worrying about the sound of your voice or what other people will think. They're like, yeah, you're gonna suck, but you're gonna get better, and you're gonna get your voice needs to be heard. One of the girls that spoke, which I thought was really cool, was a girl named Nicole Welch, and she's from rapwithnick.com, and she has a podcast called the Real Time Real Men Only podcast. She has some, I think she's a psychologist, or she has some, I think she has a master's in working with, I think she worked with prisoners, if I remember correctly. She talked a lot about prisoners, and she had worked down in South America somewhere, and with missions and helping out kids and stuff like that. But she was talking about Robert Greene, our favorite author, mastery, right? The book Mastery. Something that we hope down the line that we'll maybe do a series on that as well. Like our 48 Laws of Power series we're doing. But what she was talking about is a lot of people right now are trying to chase success, and she was saying, it's probably more important to chase mastery. You should be going where your heart is, and what, whether you're getting paid or not, that's, you still love to create, you still love to do your purpose. I mean, when you look at Michelangelo and, the great masters, they didn't paint for money. Sure, they made money and stuff like that, but they painted for themselves. And that's really what you should be doing, is finding something that you can really do, even when no one is asking you to do it. Even if no one ever, even people, try to keep you from doing it, you would still try to do it anyways. And I think that is an important thing to know, because I think a lot of people come out and they try to, follow someone else's method. It's not their method. They need to make their own path. They need to find out what's in their true heart. And I resonated with that chick. I thought that her speech was good. I wish I could have connected with her and told her. She was asking if anyone had read Robert Greene's book Mastery, and no one raised their hand. And I was like, I know about it. I didn't want to be like, hey, yeah, we do a podcast on Robert Greene. But so I'll send her an email or something. But yeah, I think it was very worthwhile. A lot of people making change, a lot of people, going out on their own and taking that leap of faith. And I think that's what it's about, man, is living a dream and believing in yourself and trying something different.
Yeah, and we all have something to offer, no matter your walk of life. I think we can all learn from something from each other, and that's, I think, something beautiful about podcasting is we can go out there, we can express ourselves, and we can learn from each other. We'd love to hear from you. Please go on to our website, send us a message. We have a voicemail box that you can leave us a message. You can get to us through email. Write a review on iTunes or Stitcher, and we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to know what you're doing to to express yourself, or the direction that you want to get headed to, and we want to be along with you on that journey as you're along with us on our journey. So I think it's time to turn up. So
all big
until
changes
next time,
start with a swift.
Just testing you.
yeah, it's live.
Just testing you.
We're live, but
yeah, I think we've been we try to keep the episodes down to a certain mark, and sometimes we like to talk too much,
Yep.
But yeah,
there'll be other times.
Yeah, whatever you can do to help out the show. If you can go out to swiftkickingass.com, we have stuff there for you, and as always,
thank you for listening to a Swift Kick in the Ass podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's content, and we ask you to please leave us a review in iTunes. Also, head over to swiftkickingtheass.com to get a free copy of the Simple Spending Tool.